Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Hotline League. It is a very exciting one because we have a returning fan favorite to the show. That's right. It's Cubby. Cubby, the co-host, is here. He'll be joining us on this week's episode, as you all might be surprised to hear. You know, I know he's here every week, but some people they heard him. They got angry whenever we talked about the development scene last week, and they said this guy's got to go, and yet he's still here. So I'm sorry.
Unlike the dev scene, we're surviving and thriving. No, I'm kidding. Anyway, everything's good. It's pretty funny, you know. We don't pull anything about the dev scene, and then we do one episode on it, and everyone's like, "Oh no, like why are we talking about this?"
I've never heard it called the dev scene before. When you say dev scene,
I was like the developers.
Developers, yeah. Is this a new term?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like we have to throw another one at him because the dialect got a little bit funky in there last week. That was fun. No, it's good to be here. And yeah, I will say, Travis, I tried to make a commitment to consume some media this week, so I'm hopeful.
Well, it's good because we've got media consumer himself on the show. It's none other than Marcus Zimmerman. Mark, how's it going?
It's going great. I finished Fallout. I said, fuck waiting for you.
Oh, damn it. I'm finishing it tomorrow.
Sorry. No, we had a week to make it happen, and it didn't happen, so had to finish that.
I've got 2 episodes left.
Yeah, not too. We haven't gone to the movies in a while, so we're going to make an effort to go again. Our AMC Stubs memberships are just withering.
What is out there that you want to see?
I don't know. I don't think anything. But I'll watch Civil War. Why not?
Yeah, I heard mixed things about it, so I don't know if it's good or not.
Yeah. We'll watch some random stuff, I'm sure. Yeah. Now watching Physical 100, new season of Survivor, stuff like that.
Nice.
So the new season of Survivor, my fantasy football league's draft order rides on that. We all have a contestant, and whoever gets knocked out first, that's where you pick in the draft.
Oh, that's a good way to do it. Who do you have?
I have to go look at the list.
What'd you say? I have
to look at the list.
Oh, you don't even know who you have.
Yeah, I didn't even know.
Forget it. We're not talking. We're not real Survivor fans here.
No, we are not.
I ran into somebody this weekend because I was up at Command Fest in San Francisco playing Magic, and somebody came up to me and was like, "Hey, man, I just want to say I listen to Hotline League every week. And I will say I miss Mark because I'm into Magic and I'm into League, obviously. And then I would also, I love when you would talk about Magic, and then I would love when he would talk about The Bachelor. And I don't have that anymore on the show. So I guess these are his 3 passions: League, Magic, and The Bachelor. And we covered it all in one show whenever Mark was on. So
I've got The Bachelor.
Oh, really? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's good because I've graduated. I can't do it. I tried to watch whatever the most recent season was, I think, and we just couldn't do it.
So my marketing job, we had a game. So like we took pop culture events, turned them into games. We could raise money for nonprofits, and we had a game around The Bachelor, and because like you can look up episode spoilers, so we had to do it on like you lost points for crying and swearing, but you gain points for like kisses, roses, and dates. And so we sat in a bar and live scored it. Was like in our back end, and that was every Monday for my first year out of college, pretty much. We got very into it.
Mark, I don't want spoilers for the last 2 episodes, okay? No fucking spoilers. I know you're the king of spoilers, but did you like Fallout? How would you rate the show off the first season?
Like if I was watching this and it wasn't a video game adaptation, I would maybe say like an 8.5.
Yeah.
But I think like having played the Fallout games, it really raises my appreciation of it to like maybe a 9 or a 9.5. Like keeping so much of the tone of the games and like the call outs and like the little things that tie it all together, I think makes it really, really good. So I think if you're not a Fallout fan, it's just a good TV show.
Yeah.
And maybe there are super hardcore Fallout fans who hate it for a totally different, like, oh, they actually fucked this one thing up and I'm gonna hate it. But I think if you're just a casual Fallout fan, you'll really like it.
Yeah, I agree. That's based off of the first 6 episodes. I would give it actually that exact same thing of like, oh yeah, I think for most people it's an 8, and I would highly recommend they watch it. But if you've played Fallout, it becomes like a 9 or 9.5. So
Yeah, I'm 4 in, and it's very fun. I'm enjoying it so far. Like it is a legitimately fun
you're
show.
4 episodes in.
Yeah.
I thought you were saying like you're foreign to the Fallout universe, like you're
No.
unfamiliar with it.
I thought you meant you're
No.
like 4 beers deep. You getting wasted or something on without us knowing because you got a Fu Manchu now or whatever you're trying to go for.
Yeah, I think
this is my
really
off season, Mark. All right, I gotta have some freedom.
Hell yeah, brother.
Yeah.
No, it's fun. It's really fun.
Yeah. I just there's so many little things. At the start of one of the episodes, during one of the episodes they start playing like one of the iconic Fallout video game tracks in the middle of it, and I'm just like, oh my god, like it just hits so much harder in that moment, and the fact that they like waited until they could have just opened the first episode like that, and they didn't. I think they saved it for like the right moment. I don't know. I just it feels so good as a fan of the series. So really enjoying that. All right. Anyway, now that we've done our normal media review, in particular with media review man himself, Mark, you released a video today. Do you want to talk a little bit about what was in it?
Well, I didn't. The LCS did. It was a team effort. There's people who helped shoot it, script it, all of that stuff. So,
when I say you, I mean the royal you,
Yeah. We put a video out as a Spring Split retrospective. I think there's a accompanying article with it to kind of also back it up. But we talked about the viewership. It was good. Talked about some other things like sentiment. Explained a lot of our thoughts on how we look at things, which I know is not going to get the most information or like the biggest hooks compared to just the numbers, but I think like talking about main broadcast versus full broadcast and the nomenclature and how you calculate these things, it might not be the most interesting to people, but I'm glad it's out there now. So I don't have to. It's like it exists somewhere on the internet.
I once had, and I appreciate this because I'm very passionate about all this stuff too, but like I once had somebody say to me that like they're not sure if any fans of anything ever are as invested in the industry of that thing as esports fans. Like sports fans aren't sitting there being like, oh my god, what's viewership like? Oh, we got to change the format. We got to change this. We got to change all these things so that like the product can survive and that all these things can happen. And yeah, in esports, obviously we are looking at the most hardcore fans when we're on Reddit and people who are interacting with social media are calling into this, but like it's just not the type of thing. If you're a fan of Apple, you're not like, yo, the earnings are on fire, like that's popping off right now, guys. Like maybe if you're an investor, but no one who's just like a fan of these things are doing well. I guess there's every now and then there's some examples where like people are very excited that Baldur's Gate sold well because they want more games like that or whatever, but people really dive into the numbers and look at like esports charts and all that stuff to try to like gauge the success of things. And so I don't know. It's I appreciate that you're putting this type of information out there for folks like myself and others that are passionate, but it is kind of funny that like this is where we're at. But yeah.
I mean, that's kind of how we framed it even internally when we were talking. It's like, well, the article is for the nerds like Travis and content creators and journalists to work with, and the video and like Hotline League are like the ways that we're going to disseminate that information because no one's going to read this, so like listen to this, here's all the good takeaways if you don't want to like read a wall of text or charts or things like that.
Pulling up right now, you had here, I'll see if I can get it on screen, but the article at least, but you had some charts in here that showed you painted a pretty rosy picture is the way that I would say it of things going in
when you're in a rose garden, it makes a rosy picture, dude.
Oh yeah, okay, fair enough. So you talked a lot about I do love that you always are like, we all do this together, blah blah blah. But you showed spring growth. You said what's the tagline? The largest split over split growth or something?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, so the two big taglines are it's the first year-over-year growth since the COVID 2020 summer split. So that's a good sign. And then the other thing is it's the largest single split growth we've ever seen in the franchise era. I think further back than that, but like the data systems they use switch. And so, I'm 100% confident in the franchise era, but I can at least say, probably ever as well if I had to guess. Both, and it's also both a percentage and raw AMA increase.
Mark, I'm looking at this graphic that's on screen right now. Hang on, where is it?
Yeah.
So I remember in the past when you've done the show with me, you've talked a lot about how, you're more the numbers guy, the engineer guy. You've talked about how graphs are supposed to show numbers or some sort of integer on both sides of the graph. And I'm noticing, I don't know if somebody cropped the image wrong or something, but I see like week 1, week 2, week 3 across the bottom. But aren't there supposed to be numbers on the left side going up and down on this vertically?
In theory, yes. We talked about like, should we put percentage of like the splits AMA or what we should do? Because we're trying not to put out. There's like information you want to get out there, and then there's information that's just going to detract like differences between a public number and our personal number or whatever. And like raw numbers are just probably going to be more distracting than they are helpful. And so there was some debate about how to best represent this. And at the end of the day, what we're talking about is the trend, which is the talking point anyways, which is we went on a 2-week break, and it was very scary to go on a 2-week break and worry that you're going to come back and your viewership's going to be dead. And these are the numbers saying it was actually flat week over week despite taking a 2-week break. So the talking point has nothing to do with the numbers. And if you start putting numbers on there, it's a different talking point. So just trying to be intentional. And I understand it looks funny for people who like numbers.
Yeah. Cubby, you have any thoughts on this before we start to dive in on stuff, or anything you want to ask Mark?
No, I mean, I thought I was a little bit surprised with the retention after the break. I was a hair surprised about that, but there are actually a lot of questions that I would ask that a caller's going to ask, so I'm kind of going to let them get to it. I can address though as the third party here, Travis. You did have a pretty big video that released this week involving the LCS.
I did. Yeah, I was going to ask Mark. Yeah. Mark, why didn't you just announce best of threes in this article or this video? Because it would have made the show so much more easy, for us.
Come on, Mark.
What best of threes?
Okay.
Yes. So for I'll just, this is a fun part of Mark and I being friends and him returning the show with me and Cubby and me reporting things at times when Mark's not ready to talk about things or whatever. I guess you guys are not talking about summer split format at this time, but for those who missed it, I did do a video talking about how multiple sources had told me that the LCS would be moving to a best of 3. You can go check that video out on the YouTube channel if you want to see it. I don't think we'll have the ability to talk too much about it on this show, but if a caller wants to call it and Mark just wants to raffo them. I was thinking about this, Mark. Somebody in the Discord was saying, like, Mark, how many times is Mark going to waffo us? Watch and find out. Waffo.
I have a lisp. I'm gonna waffo you. Ooh.
Oh no.
A watch and find out instead of a read and find out.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but if maybe if a caller can use some genius method of figuring out how to phrase their take in a way that allows Mark to talk broadly about best of threes versus, if best of threes are a thing or not. We'll figure out how creative we could get with this.
Yeah.
There might be a few per se. Also, we have Papa Smithy threatening to rulebook the commissioner, which I'd be pretty
yeah. Mark Papa Smithy says it's in the rule book. I think
I would check that rule book.
Yeah, I believe it was.
So they're adding fearless now, is what you're saying? No,
yeah. It was in the rule book, and then I think it was removed from the rule book. We don't know what the rules are here. All right.
There are no rules. Is what we've learned.
Before we get into calls, I do want to just take a second here, Mark, to ask you, like, okay, we're obviously going to spend a lot of time talking about the sort of people's opinions on things and their takes and their requests for summer and all that stuff here, but like, on a personal level, because I know the people that watch the show are fans of you and, have a parasocial relationship because it's 2024. How's the spring split been for you on a personal level, right? Because like the first 2 times you were on the show, you had just started the job essentially, and things hadn't rolled out, and so you couldn't talk. You're like, well, yeah, people are supportive and stuff, but like, how's the job coming along?
I'm burnt out. I got 2 more weeks tops. No, I really enjoy it. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of work, but I really enjoy that. And, I keep signing up for more. I'll volunteer for any conversations that I can have with anyone at Riot or not to keep trying to, get things going and have fun. So yeah, it's a lot of meetings, a lot of conversation, decks, data, spreadsheets, business jargon,
The
all that
corporate
good
slug
stuff.
life.
The relics or the rituals, excuse me. Got my rituals, the weekly syncs, the whatever mumbo jumbo. Yeah.
Is there anything that surprised you, or anything that's been really cool that you're allowed to talk about publicly?
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, most of the cool things that were like we got done are out, and the cool things we're working on, I'm not gonna say.
No, just like on a
Working on
personal
them.
level. I'm not saying things you're
Yeah.
working on, but like I don't know if you're like, oh, I learned that this team is like super cool, or the way that this integrates in is awesome, or how quickly we can, these folks can move on this thing or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I think well, I don't remember if I said this last time, but my favorite meeting I've been involved in was a production meeting, and it was actually about the face-off look. This was like back in December, I think. And just like, it was a new space. We had to design that set. We had to like do lighting, cameras, blocking, comp ops, like all these like things to get it to a level that like is a usable space. And coming in at the budgets and like hitting all these numbers and stuff, and just hearing it broken down into bite-sized pieces that a number of teams and people are owning, and then bringing it all back together and seeing it like that kind of process was really cool. And I don't know, I just like being in meeting, like, like a competence is interesting. I just like watching competence and being able to watch that team and all the people put that project together was cool. And I know, fans can meme some of this stuff, but it was something that they tackled very well, I'd say, given that the show, I think the show itself for the face-off look was quite good.
Yeah. All right. Cubby, we got stuff lined. Or actually, do you want to do the spiel? Since I know we have a couple people in the waiting room, but like maybe some people are tuning in for the first time in a while or something.
So if you want to call in and talk to the commissioner and former co-host of Hotline League, I pull the calls. But you can go to discord.gg/Travis or command Discord in YouTube or Twitch, however you choose to watch. But hop on in, drop some takes at me. If it's good, I'll put you in the waiting room and we can talk to Mark. So far in terms of topics, Travis, I have a lot asking about best of threes, which we may or may not have to dance around or ignore. But regardless,
I think if you find the most creative version of that, then maybe that's one of the calls we could take. But we can't do a full show about something that Riot has not officially announced yet with the commissioner.
In terms of like what's actually going on, it really is just kind of this video. There was a huge combine, which we probably won't take a call on, given that we had Alt-Ev League last week. But
yeah, I mean, I think this show is going to be a lot of people calling in to talk to Mark about things that they would like to see, and or sort of, hey, Mark, this was something I liked in Spring Split. Could you do this again? Hey, Mark, this is something I would like to see you change that you did in Spring Split, or just general ideas for Mark. Specific takes about the LCS. Like, this is kind of a meta episode, right? Where it's unlikely that it's kind of the perfect time to do this too, because it's not like we're going to be talking too much about Thanatos. We've talked about him previously, and there's nothing that's happened on the MSI front yet. We're going to probably start doing MSI coverage next week. So like this episode is sort of the episode to talk about the LCS in and of itself as a product. So if you have a take, please put that in the Pleb Topics take channel, and maybe take a look at some of the other takes there. So if everybody's putting good stuff about best of three, you maybe don't want to put it in a best of three topic. The other thing is, if you are a sub on Twitch or you are a member on YouTube, you should be able to get access to the subtopics channel on Discord, which moves a little slower than Pleb Topics. We do try to pull from both of those different chats. So go ahead and take a look there. But yeah.
Someone in Twitch chat, Linus Scaling, said, what was the feedback on playing with live patch? Yeah, we didn't talk too much about like the reduced transition times successes or the live patch successes, which in hindsight, maybe I should have devoted more time, because we were kind of just talking about viewership and those sorts of things. But
I mean, that's like the reduced wait time is kind of implied in viewership metrics given average minutes watched, I'd say. So yeah.
Yeah, we do
Yeah.
have more specific data that I'm happy to throw at people. Like
Yeah.
in previous years, the drop between game Nexus explosion end and game start was usually around like I think it was 16 to 18%, and for this split it was 10. So we're on average losing 8% less viewers or something between games now with this live patch. It's like a little harder to measure, but if you look at like the dives that release on patch weeks versus not patch weeks, the viewership is almost always up compared to the ones that aren't in those sorts of ones. And so there's that. We have some sentiment data about live patch stuff that is all pretty much positive for fans. Some teams enjoyed it. Some probably didn't. I think there were a couple times where there were some close calls on hot fixes that like maybe felt a little uncomfy, but nothing that like exploded or went terribly wrong. So I think that was also a pretty big success. Those worked out pretty well.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, hey, let's get into calls because it's 7:30. So
let's do it.
Yeah. Off Cubby goes to grab the first caller. Shout out to some subs. So first off, we had a whole bunch of people over on Twitch, a couple on YouTube too. We have Evies, Scaff, Triumvirus, Matt Scoot, LOL Globus, Numigos Rars, Spadeless, Slowbro, I see that Decimile. We'll get to it. 1997, George Zulu for 4 years, Aerohydrus, and the Catman. We got more coming up, but first, EzraSmiles is here. Ezra, where are you calling from?
I'm calling from around Tampa, Florida, Travis. How are you doing?
Tampa, Florida. Pretty good. How are you?
Pretty good. Thanks for asking.
Yeah. What do you want to talk about on the show?
So my take is that the LCS should have done more this split to push content during the break weeks than usual to help get through the lack of games. It's nice that a lot of the content kind of kept going like the dive, but I felt like more content would help attract like new league viewers during that break. And not to call Mark out too hard, but during one of your first interviews with him after he became commissioner, he quoted, "I think that's our job to fill the break to make sure that there's content still coming out." And I feel like there was just, not as much content as there should have been.
Yeah, especially for a 3-week break. I mean, that is a long period of time to have.
Right. Those drafty business calendars.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Everyone's calendar is a calendar. There's no difference between a business calendar and the one that's on your wall or your phone.
Mark, I don't have any calendars on my wall.
Since the Mayans have developed calendars.
Who
they did, right?
I think the Mayan calendar is very different, actually. I don't think it's the same.
Well, I'm sure they count days the same way, let me tell you.
Okay.
Or weeks, maybe?
I gotcha. Well, Mark, on Roshar, it's a 10-day week. So, Mark, Mark, what do you think of this?
I mean, agree in a sense. Like I think we could have done more things. We put out a lot of content coming out of the break week. I think we could have done more in them. Some of it was some things that didn't quite come together as much as I think we would have liked, but that's on us because to do that better. So yeah, I mean, there's not much to say there other than that is something we would do better on, hopefully.
So for background on this, I do know that like behind the scenes, the LCS kind of put out a thing towards the teams like, hey, if you want to do something, we can help out. And the only team that really stepped up to put on something big was FlyQuest, that put on the best of the West with their Challengers team. Obviously, there were limits on what teams could do because I know that FlyQuest couldn't do anything else with LCS teams. Is that something where like you might want to have the same system, like kind of enabling some orgs to hopefully get a spotlight in those weeks? Or do you think given like the fact that only one org had a real plan, like is that going to be kind of like a change of approach and trying to take things like more under your control if you can for the LCS for that week?
Well, I think the caller's question is like, I guess to them is like, what is the LCS doing? And I think the LCS can do more is how I'd say things. Like we had the dive and a pros, I think, and a couple other, like I think we had an educational piece or like an Are You Smarter might have come out the week we were coming out. And we did some co-streams of things, but that was about it. So yeah, I think we can do more next time.
Yeah. So Ezra, it sounds like Mark is in agreement. What about you? What would you like to see during that break, caller?
Yeah, so I mean, I of course would want to see more team-oriented content. So, like the Are You Smarters then are great, and basically anything where I get to see like more of the player is just a really like it just makes it seem like I'm more connected to the teams and whatnot.
Yeah.
I
I think
think
it's just more team oriented content or like bringing in pros. That's kind of more of what I was looking to see.
Yeah, I mean, I think something like that makes a lot of sense, especially on the team side. So I'm curious to see how that stuff evolves over time. But anything else you want to shout out, Ezra?
Well, I'll shout out Mark. Just shout out Mark for specifically for the pre and post season messages or like videos. I thought they were both really good. And outside of Jackie, Mark's really the first commissioner I kind of got to know, or I appreciate the visibility. It feels like the LCS as a product is actually like listening or caring more, or at least that's what it feels like. And as always, shout out you, Travis and Covey.
Yeah. Thank you so much for the call. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks. Bye.
All right. On to the next caller. We've
That was
got.
a quick caller.
No,
Efficient.
I know. Well, I guess on Mark's end, he could only be like, "I agree, we should do more."
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would have debated them a little bit was like it'd be good for getting new fans. I'm like, well, I don't think you should make like a big initiative to bring fans in on a week that you're not on. But that would be the only other thing I would say is like it's more about keeping your currently engaged fans interested during that time period, I think. But
Yeah, I mean, to their point though, I do wonder if there's a way that you could do content that is for that week that with the players that is a little bit more broad to like the average LCS fan. You know, like okay, they're not competing in the LCS, but is there some way that you can do something? You know, a bunch of content around a new champion that's coming out, or something about the new patch or whatever. And obviously, you guys have been putting that stuff out for a while, but I think that would make sense.
Yeah, I'm not saying like you wouldn't go, and I just mean like you're not driving them towards anything. Like the content that you're making is not going to drive towards. Like,
yeah, I guess that's fair. You're like, okay, guys.
So I mean, like we can make a whatever new champions coming out around that time or skin, or I don't know what it would be if there was another one, but you know, like during that time period, maybe we could have done something more that would keep fans just generally engaged. I think is what it is more than like we're going to spin up this crazy idea during a week where the LCS is not on.
Yeah.
You know, a harder sell, because what fans want to watch is the LCS. Like show matches have always perform worse than like the actual competition.
I have fond memories of some of the original show matches though. You guys did there was some goofy shit on those. It was fun.
April Fools. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, those were fun. Yeah.
I mean, those are nice as like additional content, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, it is. You do kind of have to link into something, but I don't know what they could link into during that break or something. I almost wonder. I mean, I know this is crazy to say. It's funny because there is such animosity between fans, you know, with like Valorant versus League or whatever. But I almost wonder if there is some opportunity there to be like, and we're gonna do something where our players are playing Valorant. You know, we're gonna do like a LCS Valorant show match or something, and lean into like the Valorant stuff rather than sort of this awkward thing we're in right now where we all kind of are like, yeah, so there's some Valorant starting. We're taking the week off. See you guys later, you know?
Yeah. Some of the like streamers do tournaments like that where it's like Valorant, League, and TFT, and you form a team and you have to like do the best in all those, and like certain people can play certain matches. It's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did a social thing for Overlap where we had our players try and guess their champion or agents, and they tried to guess ours. I think our players did better.
Really?
Yeah. And then we sent them to each other's socials, so it was like their pros guessing our champions, and that was I think on our channel.
Yeah.
And I think I can't.
And guessing like what 30 agents versus 160 champs. Who would have thought?
Yeah.
You know, Guild League pros.
Very balanced.
Exactly. It's so easy over there. There's only 30
Before
30 agents.
Before we get to the next caller, I do see in the chat, Hello Hi says, can you ask Mark why Mark lied and said he would join the LCS Discord to help drive engagement and hasn't yet?
It's the break glass in case of emergency. That's what it's.
Turn the ship around. If we're in an emergency, your plan is to just join the LCS Discord? That's how you're going to solve the emergency?
No. I got a bunch of messages from. We had an on-site like ask me box that was just out as well.
Yeah.
And I have a stack of things I haven't answered. So at some point I'll try, like, if when the off season maybe slows down a little bit, I'll just like take a day on Twitter, Discord, and just start like doing things.
Nice. Yeah. All right. Well, Cubby, you want to go grab the next caller?
Yeah, sounds good.
Over on YouTube, Sir Ashton gifted us a membership, and Nenyo gifted a membership. Nenyo is continuing a membership. And then John sent $20 super chat. Says, love seeing Mark again. You guys should check out a show called Pantheon. Show is super underrated. Over on Twitch, we got Catman for 21 months, Kelzafar, Director Donut, Warzamad, Jordan, Nuclei, Cow His, Princess Kayami, Turtle Empire, I Am Elvis 4, SLC Soy Boy. And we got the next caller here. It's Rico Suave returning to the show. Rico, where are you calling from?
I'm calling from New Rochelle, New York.
Calling from New York. What do you want to talk about on the show?
Before we do that, just a traditional thing. Boo! Fuck the commissioner.
Very good. Non-sporting fans will have no idea what that is, but I know Mark appreciates it. What do you want to talk about, though?
I want to talk about what is his plan to increase NA viewers, not just viewership, but specifically NA viewers. A lot of viewerships has been coming through co-streamers outside of North America. And second part to this question is, what is your plan to gain the attention of young viewers? Something I've noticed is Riot for the past couple of years have done a poor job to try to like reach out to the next generation, which a lot of traditional sports have done. That is to get the young viewers, have them grow up into esports and just become an actual like normal thing instead of being like a weird thing.
Rico, I'm very confused by the second part because I do feel like if you look at the finals hype videos, one of them was a golfing video. So like, I mean, that's probably a pretty good way to get in a lot of Zoomers and young folks. So I think I just disagree with you on that. But to the first part, Mark, NA viewership, obviously it's great to celebrate a lot of this viewership that's coming in from other regions, but
yeah, Rico, did you see the tweet and like conversation on Reddit that was kind of around demographics and stuff?
I tend to ignore Reddit because it's a cesspool.
I mean, that's fair enough. I assume that means you also did not see my tweet about this. So I'm going to answer this question in a roundabout way, but it's because I'd rather attack the logic of the question than the answer. Because I think one thing that I don't want to get in the habit of is like a yes, no kind of like conversation around things. Like there's a number of times where the goalpost has shifted this year in the criticism of the LCS. And I follow it pretty closely. And anytime I commented somewhat directly on it, or someone else did, that the goalposts seem to move.
Can you give an example, Mark?
Yes, absolutely. So initially, viewership was down, supposedly. In week one, that was like a report because the opening weekend wasn't as big as some other opening weekends. But then it started to hold stable. And then the conversation became, it's just holding stable and doing well because of co-streamers. And that was the framing. And then that kind of got picked apart because the framing of that was very strange when compared to other Riot products where like co-streamers are celebrated and in our demographic, they weren't celebrated. And around that time, it's like, oh, you shouldn't be on during the Super Bowl. And then I was like, it didn't matter. Like it didn't really matter. We can track this stuff. Like this is how I watch the LCS. I have the LCS show on my screen and every single other viewership of everyone co-streaming and watching the LCS going at the same time. So when something happens, I can see the effect on every single chart or every single account that's streaming. So I can see Super Bowl started, we're hitting our last game, how much the effect is, and that's how I was able to say like it was about 2% average across the weekend. Like how much the Super Bowl mattered. And it's like take a dark week then, like no thank you, I'll take the 2% hit. I think other changes would be bigger than a 2% hit. And then it changed again to your NA demographic has surely shrunk coming from streamers, and that's why in this response I put out, rather than just be like NA up or down, because the goalposts always move, it'll be by how much, or like is it hours watched or unique viewers? Like what do you mean NA viewership is up or down? Like the goalpost always shifts, and that's why I usually like to attack the argument, which is how do you even know my demographic? And I talked about that a little bit, such as like Brazilian viewership. We've always had a chunk of Brazilian viewers, and that number has dropped by 2/3. We've gone to 30% roughly of what our Brazilian viewership was on our main channels because we opened up a partnership with Biano as a co-streamer. He's fantastic. they've left the main channel and they've gone to him. That's a win for us. This is a better watch experience for Brazilian fans who watch the LCS. And naively, people would probably say, oh, your viewership's down on your main channel because your main channel was 100% North American. And like just the general conversation around demographics are poor. And like it's built on a bunch of assumptions. And the goalposts have moved a number of times. And so I'd rather just say, hey, these assumptions are just not true, rather than get into like some of this stuff. Because at the end of the day, I can't open my books and answer yes or no to every question as they come in. Like that's just something that like a big company is never going to do, as like you ask these questions and I'm going to go blah blah blah, yeah, yes no, yes no, yes no, and like keep having this conversation as certain goalposts move. So it also is something that I'm not going to put out in like our main talk points. I'm going to put them where they make sense in conversations like this, and I'm happy to have them and try and guide people to like asking the right questions rather than like just working with the assumptions. And so I would just say, like, how do you even know what NA's demographic is? Like what is this? What is the basis of your assumption in the first place? People assume that like, I mentioned in that post as well, Cadrill's on. I love Cadrill. I fucking watch him every time he's on, but he was on 10 out of our 22 show days and often left before game 4 because he has a really loaded schedule and he's a busy guy. And like, I'm glad he watches any of us, but he tunes out at some points. And I can see how the numbers change after that. And I have all these charts up. And like, of course, he is not just drawing in new viewers, but he's pulling some existing viewers as well. And so just like any conversation around this stuff is so just from the beginning misguided in the first place by talking about things with like single charts or like, I don't know. I've been following this conversation closely. And it's one for me where I'm like, the basis of this conversation is off from the jump.
You're saying essentially like there's not public demographic data on this stuff, and yet people will make statements like, "Oh, it's only going up in non-English, or it's only going up in non-North American folks," when the public sites that chart this stuff do not do that.
Yeah, and I think it's like because this is always usually brought up from certain crowds who then move to the next talking point if something gets changed on them. Like it's just not the conversation I would prefer to have. I think it's a route that just goes on too long. It's like I'm not going to sit here and keep bringing these up. So there you go. There's my thoughts like on how I look at demographics and how you should be looking at demographics. And unfortunately, like I have the data and you don't, and it's annoying. I know to have someone with data just be like, I'm not going to keep answering every single yes or no question. Because again, if I say yes, NA viewership is actually up this split, what does viewership mean? Are we talking specifically AMA, hours watched when there's less airtime? Are we talking about UVRs? What is the more important metric? How many people from North America tuned in at some point this split? Or would you rather have a really core dedicated watching group who are watching more? Like these are the sorts of questions that can spin up afterwards, and there's always a follow-up. So it's just a different conversation entirely.
Rico, do you have a follow-up for Mark on any of that, or otherwise I myself or Cubby might jump in on that?
I mean, it might just the other question is kind of that second part, just like what's your plan to keep this longevity, keep the viewership's longevity? Because I've always seen it as like the league has been viewed by a certain generation, and it's already been more than 11, 12 years now since the LCS has been implemented.
So before we get to the age part, because I do want to get to that, I want to make sure before we stop talking about the demo stuff, because I know Mark, you're saying like you're not going to talk necessarily about our percentage of North American viewership has changed by this amount or whatever. I would just ask, generally speaking, like how does the LCS and LCS leadership think about this stuff? Like does every view from every region matter for the LCS? Like, or is there an emphasis on like if there's a trade-off between? I mean, this is the stuff I talked about with Needham, back whenever we were looking at weekdays versus weekends. Like, does the LCS say, okay, this is like a product for primarily North American viewership, and thus we should make decisions based around that? How do you all measure this stuff in the meetings when you're making these decisions?
Also, like, if a viewer goes from the main broadcast to a co-stream, does that value of the viewer change in terms of like talking partnerships and getting sponsors in? I'd be curious about that one as well.
Yeah, I think I'll answer this question again, trying to be conscious of like yes or no's can be dangerous.
Yeah.
I'll say this: LCK had an absolutely baller ass finals, and it set viewership records. Have you seen how much conversation is about where those viewership numbers are coming from? From anyone, anywhere?
Outside of it, not including the viewership from China, no.
So why is NA always under this like microscope that no one else exists under?
I think it's because people are concerned that our region, like some of the fans, prefer to watch others because they view it as that's a higher quality game. And so, like, with the context of other sports, like, you want to be fans like your home region, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I'm not saying that like I'm just saying it's always funny when like if we hit a record peak or AMA's back or something like that, it suddenly becomes this other conversation. If anyone else is doing good things, no one asked that conversation. I think when you see that like people are celebrating that, I think that's the way that Riot generally looks too, is like, hey, this product is doing well, it's recovering, it's on the right path, or it's hitting new peaks or whatever it is. Like I think both matter to the question of like regional versus domestic fandom. But I think like I don't think it's this one thing where one is going to completely dominate the other, though. You know, I think for the North American League, North American fans are a demographic we absolutely have to make sure is satisfied with the product, which is the other part that we included in this conversation, which gets really detracted from AMA and viewership and these sorts of things, is like, well, how satisfied are your fans with the product that you're producing? And I think that was the other half of this article, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other answer to your question, Mark, which is like, why do people not talk about the viewership and all that stuff around LCK other than say big number good? I think there's because people are not worried that the LCK won't exist 2 years from now. You know, like there's so much doom and gloom around the LCS.
I can say that's, I mean, League of Legends esports, North America here. But I think like, I understand that like North America's region has been struggling for a long time. It's under an extra microscope. People want this sort of information, and you know I'm going to try and provide it as much as I can. But I think it's something that people do discuss. It is something that's an active conversation in when you talk about the leadership rooms. Like, how's this doing versus that? You know, where are these numbers coming from? It's something that you work with a number of teams on. But I don't think it's like one comes at the cost of the other or anything like that.
Yeah. So to bring it back to sort of my question and Cubby's question, it sounds like generally speaking, there's not a ton of concern if you have, a Portuguese viewer leave the LCS broadcast and go watch Baiano. There's not a ton of concern if, in one split, a lot of the viewership growth, and I'm not saying that this is what happened in spring, but like if you looked at the charts and you saw, oh, we had a lot of viewership growth this year, a lot of it came from not North America. That's not something where you guys are freaking out or concerned or anything.
No, it's not like just because another region's viewership might have grown. Like undoubtedly, Baiano brought a portion of Brazilian viewership, and we're not like, oh no, how terrible. Like that's absolutely not the perspective. And to cover your point about like how you package this up and communicate it and sell it, like again, that's something where not going to talk about how Riot internally handles deals with partnerships, people, and other companies.
Sure.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, to Rico's second question, which is how do we get the Zoomers in, or how do we get
Zoomers,
the audience? I mean, here, let me wait. I'm gonna do this for you guys, Cubby and Mark. I have a sports analogy for you, in a traditional sports analogy.
Wow.
There's a lot of conversation, has been for many years, about the average age of the MLB fan getting older, right? And like, like the fandom for MLB, the viewership is like aging out. That has ramifications for the longevity of the sport. Like if you're not replacing folks who are not able to watch the MLB anymore with folks who are, if you're not, attracting a younger audience that might be more valuable to sponsors, et cetera, et cetera. That's like a whole thing, right? And so I think that's the other question is like, hey, you just lose naturally if you are not able to replace LCS viewership with younger folks. You naturally lose people because maybe they go start lives and they don't have the time on the weekends or something along those lines. I know you're going to do that thing where you're like, why are you assuming we're not replacing our audience with younger people?
No,
maybe these are all Zoomers, But like, I do think I can tell you my demographic data for this stuff, and I think a lot of other folks is showing that like the audience is aging. So, I don't know. Is this something you all think about as trying to get, a younger audience or whatever?
Yep. Yeah. I mean, so to take a small step back, like, yes, we talk about all the things that we're talking about here. It's not like just because I was like, this is not a public discourse conversation. It's annoying that the LCS gets this like level of scrutiny on this, but like that doesn't mean we don't talk about it internally. Same here. Like, yeah, I think we're all always concerned about how do you bring in the next generation and keep this like growing and interesting. So it is something that, you know, people talk about. There's collegiate. I know on this show you guys talk a lot about like, is collegiate the new tier 2, and like all these sorts of things are worthwhile conversations. I think for me, one of the biggest things is knowing how much of our percentage plays the game who watch, and it's pretty high. And so I think where the LCS has like it's a multi-step problem. And I think the first phase that we are most interested in fixing, and you heard me talk about a lot, is churned or new fans, meaning like people who actively play the game right now in North America. How do we get them to watch the North American League? To this point about North American viewers, there's a ton out there that we have not captured. And I think this is one of the things that we can do a much better job at, and try to have initiatives to convert players to viewers, because that is a good relationship. There's a lot of data about the two, and you can argue chicken or egg around some of it, like how much they play once you start watching. Do you watch more or play more, like these sorts of things? But
shockingly, Riot's able to make a better business whenever people are playing the game.
Yes, believe it or not. And so you want them invested in your ecosystem, and esports seems to have very invested fans. And so if you can convert your players to esports fans, they're probably more invested. And how exactly you do that is difficult, but one of the main ways I think that the LCS can grow. Now, how you grow your younger gaming demographic or whatever is like the same conversation, but through a different lens, which is like, well, is League popular with teenagers? Like, I think knowing that it's kind of hard to just jump into watching, like first phase is how do you make League, I think, something that younger players are really into and stuff. So it's kind of a roundabout answer, but like I think that the first problem that we're most concerned about is like, okay, we see the player base in North America, we think we can get a bigger slice of that pie, let's go do that. And the first, I guess that's phase 2 of what was already phase 1, which was like, make this a better product for the fans who already like watching LCS. And I think based off the AMA and those numbers, that was good. I think the PCU conversation, which, you know, we brought up, it's not like it's all bright siding in this article and stuff, you know, like peaks were not where we want them to be. And I think that speaks to the more casual audience who's going to tune in to a finals who might not watch the rest of the year and be like, or the split, or they're going to come back and make sure they don't want to miss the finals or whatever. I think that's a pretty large area of improvement.
One quick question on this stuff, because we've referenced it a couple times. I realize that we haven't really explained this. Mark, what the fuck is AMA? You know, because like so many people will hear AMA is up or whatever, and I think they don't actually know it's like a good thing, right? But maybe they don't understand.
It's questions to ask on Reddit.
Yeah.
Ask me anything. Yep. Mm-hmm. So there was roughly a 10% more people asking me anything this split.
Gotcha.
No, it's average minute audience. And so every single minute you catalog how many people are watching, and then you take that number and average that.
Okay.
So.
Gotcha. So you're just like, what is the average number of people watching at any given minute of the LCS?
Yep. And then
Gotcha. Okay. Rico, I know Mark didn't talk too much about, you know, the Zoomer side. He wasn't like, you know what, we're going to emphasize TikTok, or we're going to go partner with, I don't know, Roblox. What?
I mean, I think like alternative forms of broadcasting your content and those sorts of things are definitely areas to look at. I think I mentioned this. I forget if I mentioned this last time, but like Worlds had a feed on TikTok that had like decent watch rate or like watch time for what is a feed in TikTok normally. Like it's still a low compared to like a YouTube average viewer duration, but it was still pretty good. So I think it's something that Riot as a whole wants to look at more. But it's been a very interesting time for TikTok in the United States, which as a big company you are keeping an eye on.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
And anything like in terms of trying to engage kids like in a team setting. I mean, I've always really been a big proponent for putting this game in high schools. I feel like that's a good way to get people interested in both the game and the competitive side, where they can try and learn it as a team. Like, is that at all a focus for you guys in trying to snowball that into just a more popular game and a bigger player base, and hopefully that bleeds into your products for esports?
So that is not exactly my product in a sense. There are people who have like the collegiate and scholastics, level of conversations, and I'm actually not on that team. I could bug them and join in and be a bigger part if I wanted to. But I only got so much time, so I'm trying to, like, in terms of that priority of things to do, it's like, all right, just let that team cook over there. Same way, like tier 2 is technically not my product either. There's Zach Woopley, as you know, and he and I work very closely together because our products directly link in some ways. We're on right after each other and all these sorts of things, and his players are going to feed into my ecosystem directly, hopefully, and like, so there's a little bit more. But yeah, there are other teams working on North American esports other than just LCS product people.
Gotcha. So tier 2, if something's going on there, you take no accountability whatsoever if there's any issue.
I said I work very closely with Zach. We're good buddies.
Caller, what do you think of all of Mark's answers here so far?
Sound like some Riot chill answer. No, just kidding. Thanks for answering. One more take. Move the draft to the weekend's not Thursday. Come on.
Move what?
The draft?
Never mind. You guys don't get it. All right.
It's a traditional sports joke?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh.
I was going to
Football's
say...
drafts on a bad night.
Sorry. Thank you.
Mark. Jeez. All right. Have a good night, guys. Shout out to Fly Chris. They're going to be PSG and T1. Good night.
See ya. Thank you.
Lit.
What were you going to say, Mark?
I was going to say, I'm absolutely a slug and a shill. I'm here to push out the good storylines. It doesn't mean they're wrong, but someone's got to toot this horn. I ain't seen one article talking about the biggest split over split growth ever in the LCS. Huh? I guess I'll put it out.
You're saying it's you versus the world? That's the premise here.
Didn't you put that article out by publishing it already?
That's what I mean. Though, is like, of course I'm going to toot our goddamn horn. No one else is going to do it for us, Like, and I mean this for NA fans. Like, I swear to God, they have to deal with more bullshit than any other League esports fan in the world. No one else has to deal with like the amount of like, and for good reason. There's been some history of people being skeptical about LCS or whatever, but you have to read these like takes online consistently that are like sometimes nonsense, so yeah, I'm gonna toot the LCS horn. I'll chill out and be a slug on this side because like I'll do it. There's plenty to be negative about. Some of it justified, some of it ridiculous. And I don't think fans only have to read that stuff. Like I'll be out here whenever there's an L, I'll hold it. But when there's a W, I'm a fucking shout that out.
Yeah. All right. Cubby, you want to go grab our next caller?
Yeah, I got it.
Thank you to Turtle Empire, I am Elvis 4, SLC Soyboy, Patrick N. Rewind, I think is how you say that name. Brewy, Exploding Tree, Shavul, Shansan, Palace, Something to Mouth 69420, Morigami, Slawcat, Farmer Span, Kanoke, Mr. Dr. Enchilada, Decimaya, who gifted another 5 subs. Very generous of you. We'll get to more of those in a second, but first off, we've got our next caller here. Caller, what's your name? Where are you calling from?
It is Azikiel from the sewers of Minnesota.
Azikiel from the sewers of Minnesota. I didn't know that Minnesota had sewers. I assume it's all just like
freeze over.
Yeah.
That's the same
they
thing.
Burst.
That's what Travis said last time. You used his joke.
Wait, I just said that.
Are you the same person?
Yeah, I mean, yes.
Is that how Travis applied for the LCS Commish slot? Because you're the same person?
Yes, exactly. I applied through Mark. What do you want to talk about on the show?
Tell us apart.
Okay, my question is, you can answer it from like your opinion or from the LCS Productions opinion. But what are your Royals thoughts on adding unbroadcasted games and Fearless Draft to the LCS?
Unbroadcasted games. Can you provide some context on this? Because this is not the first time I have heard this. For some context, folks, like a month or two ago, whenever I made a video talking about how Riot was limited in the formats they could make by how many broadcast days they wanted to add to the split, some people said, yeah, just have games that aren't broadcasted. And I thought that was fucking insane that people thought that
It's
was
not.
a reasonable take. Like, just don't broadcast. Like, we care so much about adding more games to the LCS that we don't care if they're broadcast or not. I thought it was just crazy. But
Okay,
is
so
that what you were
I'm
talking about, Azikiel?
Yeah. So Palafox was a person who, when you were interviewing, suggested the idea himself.
Yeah, so that
And,
was fucking insane. I think I had that reaction to tell him that at the time. But yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, so I mean, so I guess I'll just make the case for like the biggest positives for it is the players, they all want more games, for their own practice sake, as well as because they feel they're not getting enough games to contribute towards who's the winner of the splits. And the fans, we want to see the players play better. And
What if-
a great way to let that happen is to get them having more practice games.
So what if they had unbroadcasted games that didn't count, where these teams could actually
don't care if they don't
match
count.
up against each other?
The reality is these people, they are corporate stupid slugs, and they only care about the money. So you have to make the games count.
Well, if they only care about the money, then things aren't trending more. Anyway,
I'm just playing, but I mean, I still think the general point of almost every player who's retired will tell you afterwards they were never able to get themselves to care about the games that didn't count. Like that. That's what they all say.
God, that sounds like a player problem rather than an LCS problem. But
Okay, but if they all say it, you have to live with the reality. You can't live in. The
to
land
be
you
clear,
want
I
to.
don't
But
think they
anyways,
would all
the
say
question's-
that. I think that's such a I've interviewed many players and done many retirement interviews, and I don't know if there's a single time where they said I just didn't care about the games that like they just didn't care about scrims. You know, I just think it's right. Okay, so anyway, so that's your premise: is you want to add games that are unbroadcasted. What's the second part of it? Oh, Fearless Draft.
Fearless Draft, because I mean, there's the LPL rumors, and I have to say, if LPL does do it and Mark doesn't do it, he better have a damn good reason.
Do you know? But there's this rumor that people talked about that had LPL is going to get Fearless Draft. Mark.
I did see that,
Okay.
of course.
Mm-hmm.
What's the first one you want me to tackle, caller? Fearless or unbroadcasted games?
Either way, I'm good.
Why are unbroadcasted games good for fans?
The players play better. We get to see better play. Also, you can choose to have the games not be broadcasted that are like the less popular games. You can give more, like you can do like best of fives, and then not broadcast the best of fives for the games between the bottom teams, for example. Like there's a lot of things.
What
do
about
with it.
what about fans of those teams? Or like, what if you have a popular team who drops into like some unbroadcasted part of the bracket or something?
Let's put it this way: like, would the games be pre-recorded and you could still watch them? Because like, if games are just gonna get like blacked out, everyone's gonna hate that.
Yeah, no, I would never say that the game should not exist anywhere. Like people wouldn't even believe the league exists. No, it'd be you're gonna watch it
So
without
we're
casters.
pre-recording games. We're pre-recording games, and then you just get the VOD.
They could also be live, but the point is you would have less production value. You wouldn't have the casters, maybe whatever your biggest costs are. You guys cut those things.
So we're gonna play games in Freak's basement.
Yeah, whatever it takes to let
Okay.
you afford having more games.
And do you think this will help the LCS as a product improve?
Yes, because
I mean, that's
We
an
get
opinion one can have.
the games that you still broadcast are the most important games. I mean, let's put it this way: if the games only that we ever saw were between like top 5 teams at the 8, viewership would go up. No.
Yeah, if you cut out all the bad, or I shouldn't say bad, but like the games that are less interesting to fans, yes, technically the viewership goes up. But then what do you do for building those teams' fandom if they're never on the broadcast? Like how do you try and make fans? Like what's the
There's
end
things
goal
you
there?
can do. You can have like in the first like 30-minute slots where you guys have the analysts talking about stuff. You can have them talk about the games that weren't broadcasted, talk about the best players in them.
So I
If
will
it seems
just
to play
as a
better,
quick
that kind of
aside, I see people saying cut him off, but no, I'm not going to because I have seen this sentiment multiple times from folks. Like I want to have the discussion because I keep fucking seeing this shit and it's toxic. So let's go, Mark. Not toxic. It's just ridiculous.
So one thing we include in the article when talking about main broadcast versus full broadcast was the fact that our pre-show gets roughly 1/3 of the AMA, aka viewership, of the actual like matches and breaks and like core of the show. So I don't think putting in whatever percentage of these games that you think are not compelling enough to broadcast in there is going to move the needle in terms of helping build fandom or whatever. I think all the partners in our league should be playing on the main stage. All the players in our league should be playing on the stage. Like, you shouldn't get like a worse experience because of that. Because like your team doesn't have a ton of fans, or you don't have a ton of fans. Like, that seems like I don't know how what you're using to slice what is considered not a good game. Is it standings? Because like maybe some Cloud9 games this split wouldn't have been broadcast. If it's by like engagement, like what about a good team who suddenly does really well? Like, what if this team is like on a hot streak but they're off broadcast? Like, I don't even understand how you solve this problem from the beginning to like make it a good viewing experience, let alone like whether or not it's a good choice. You have to first like actually build the system to do that.
I mean, I think I get your point. I think from a fan perspective who doesn't have to deal with the actual like boots on the ground perspective, from my POV, I don't care if the bottom teams aren't getting fans. I want to only see the games between people who are in the top 4 or 5 in the standings. I don't care about the bottom 3 teams. I can see how that's not reasonable from your perspective. I think that's just what like a fan might think. So maybe it's best to go onto the fearless draft side, because I think that's an unbridgeable gap.
I think it's something where a percentage of fans would enjoy just watching more of their favorite or best teams in the league by whatever metric you call that. I can totally see that there's a group of fans who like that. There's also a group of fans who like watching every game and who like being clued in and knowing what's going on. And maybe this player is playing well, like Castle. Like, Castle was a player who was playing very well on a team that was struggling a little bit. I think there's people who probably enjoyed knowing that. So you just get into a lot of really sticky product problems if you're going to like not be broadcasting games. You can do it, but I don't think that's healthier for a league as much.
Better get the best media deal of all time. We're going to black out games. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean,
God.
it is crazy to me to think of the idea that this would be somehow better for fans. Like, I think what has already surprised me is how hard and I think it's a very small subsection of fans, will be willing to burn down every other aspect of the sport to try to optimize for what they perceive to be the path to performance, which is not usually demonstrate, like that. It's very subjective, it's people often do this. And so a great example is this call, right? Where like, you have a caller, no offense caller, I appreciate you calling in because I've seen this take elsewhere, and I appreciate you're being very reasonable in your conversation, but like, you have a caller who is willing to make it so that you can't actually watch every LCS game and all of that just so that we can potentially get scrims that count, essentially.
Yeah, it's like a scrim prize pool. I've seen this argument too. I
Yeah,
don't like it either.
To be fair, I would say that's not what I'm saying. Like, this would allow you to have best of 3s throughout the regular split more easily, like without having to have less like one round robin. Because I mean, you can have 2 game round robin, and half the games aren't broadcast.
Oh, so it's not even necessarily about the competitiveness. It's just that you like the format.
This is the way to get more games in.
This is the way, but it's not the way to get more games. It's the way to get more of the games that you will see. I'm not saying that this is Mark's take here or Mark's position, but let's say LCS is because of requirements, they can only broadcast twice a week. It's like, now we don't have to watch this Immortals Dignitas match because now we're just going to get another Team Liquid C9 match or something along those lines.
Yeah, that is my goal.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the better way to do that, rather than hiding matches, is to do something like why not just do what the LEC does, right? Which is eliminate your quote unquote bad teams earlier.
I'm very happy with that too, but I just haven't. If we start like a really long like playoff series or whatever would make that happen, I'm very happy with that too.
Yeah, I mean, I just think like I'm not saying that's what I'm in favor of, but if your pure goal is just I just want to see my favorite teams or quote unquote the best teams more often, then I think that's a better solution rather than having like secret games.
Yeah, I'm with you. I just haven't heard of what what that format looks like, so I can't.
Yeah.
I can't suggest it without having heard of it.
Like putting this into like something feasible, right? If there were games that were running alongside the stage games on the satellite stage, and then those games were broadcasted after the main games, I'd be fine with that, right? Like, I if that gets more games, I'm actually okay with that. But I'd still broadcast it live. It's just the games be pre-recorded.
Mark, I know you're buddies now with the LEC commissioner and all that stuff, but isn't it funny to look at Twitch chat right now? Do you remember a year ago around this time where we had callers all talking about how shitty the LCS format was compared to the LEC format, and everybody wanted the LEC format, and you and I were like skeptical of it, and we got a ton of heat. And now you look at the Twitch chat when we're talking about LEC format, and everybody's saying LEC format is dog shit. 3 splits is kind of dookie, though. The LEC format sucks ass. It is just so funny how 1 year later, the conversation has shifted in the direction that old Mark, non-commissioner Mark, and I had agreed on.
Yeah, but I also feel like sometimes, to that point about like some regions getting different lenses, like we get a heavy viewership lens, I feel like LEC just gets slammed on format no matter what. Like they adopted our live, transition changes,
Yeah,
and like
all the players
they
hated
got,
it. It was wild.
yeah, they got slammed for it, and like fans back that up, and even people who watch the LCS who loved it would then say this is terrible for LEC because like their pro players didn't like it or whatever. And so
wasn't it mostly casual though? It all came
no, I
from
think
the
other
rat.
people. No. I mean, like a lot of fans. I think independent, like even before that, I think we're saying it once pro players had kind of come out not liking it as much.
Sure.
So, anyways, point being, just like if I'm going to complain about the lens that LCS gets, I think LEC gets it pretty rough from fans with viewership or whatever.
It's the pendulum,
Format, yeah.
One hates EU more, the other one hates NA, and it just swings. It's swinging over to EU now because go NRG.
They just got to bring back ties because EU fans love ties.
Still pro best twos anyway.
Yeah.
Fearless
I
draft.
think, like at the end of the day, the biggest thing for the product perspective that we have right now is like what's best for fans and fandom and engaging in the league. And I don't think blacking out games is really the answer. It's probably feels good for people who are fans of the top teams, but there's plenty of people who are just fans of LCS generally or fans of those teams that you're saying shouldn't get on the broadcast. Like it's a pretty I don't think it leads to a better long-term product.
Fearless draft. What do you think, Mark? You a fan of what we tested this year in Challengers League?
Can I actually ask you first? I saw Whooply put out a poll who about what do people like about Fearless Draft.
Was that on Twitter?
And yeah, it was on Twitter. And I think I have a lot of thoughts on Fearless. I'll try and make it not take up the rest of the show. But like,
well, you asked Cubby first, and then you didn't. You're like, "Can I ask you first?"
No,
No,
I'm gonna get his take. I'm gonna get his take as someone who has actually watched it, because my point was gonna be that most of the people pushing for Fearless, I don't think have watched the LDL or NACL, and so Cubby, as someone who has worked this broadcast, probably has a really good perspective on if he likes Fearless.
I do. I think it, like, for me though, I'm someone that I watch all the games. And so for me, having a little bit more variance brings like more of a novelty to the game. And I think fans will latch onto that regardless. I do have some qualms with it, but overall, I think that like that baseline, I'm a fan of it. I know some pros really want to have the Fearless draft where all 10 champs are then taken off the board. That's interesting because like it was like there were quite a few series where it's like, okay, one team gets Renekton, then the next team gets Gragas, and then the next game you get both, right?
Yeah.
Another thing that would be really interesting for that is that flex picks are very much nerfed in Fearless because you only get to use them once, and so that's like moving on to the series, you lose a pick you can use in more scenarios compared to normal drafting. Well, all of a sudden now if all 10 champs get banned, flex picks become incredibly valuable in the early draft because like you can deny a ton of strategies from the other team and yourself, right? I think that like for the novelty, I enjoy it, but I don't think it should be adopted until I think that like it should be globally adopted with international tournaments. So yes.
Yeah, I think this is me, Mark the human, not Mark the LCS product lead speaking here.
Yeah.
but I have a similar read after checking that thread, and like I watched a little bit, and honestly, I didn't feel like Fearless was like because I was in and out of the game, so I didn't see
Yeah.
like the whole series evolve.
It didn't matter until best of fives. It really didn't.
And that was kind of my feeling
Yeah.
too. And then I think you get this really awkward world where you have to do the more aggressive Ultimate Fearless or whatever you guys want to call it version, where you're banning everything picked to get it to feel palpable in best of threes. And then when you move to best of five, it's like, oh god, that's too aggressive because your fifth game, which should be like your best game, is going to probably in terms of quality be your worst because it's going to be 50 champions banned at that point.
Yeah.
You know, and it's pretty aggressive to remove that amount of the champion pool. And I'm not sure like game 5 series on the line, here we go, no one can play anything they're comfortable with, you know. So I think what I agree with you is there's a level of novelty and it does move the needle towards champion diversity that makes it interesting and fun.
Yeah.
I just don't think it's like, if that's your goal, I don't really think Fearless gets you there cleanly, or like in like it doesn't really get you. I don't think it's like the end state, I guess is what I would say. If champion diversity is the goal, I don't see how Fearless gets you there as the end state.
I mean, it's the same thing as like Overwatch banning certain heroes or like doing role lock, right? Like that took a lot of creativity out of the game, and ultimately, if the game's balanced well, then that creativity should be there, right? So I kind of agree with you with that, but also from a very long season of covering a Dev League and watching every game, Fearless Draft did make that more fun for me because some games were just stupid, and that was very fun. You know, like people like the Shaco Vygar game that 100 Thieves have. We're going to have more games like that if there's Fearless, right? It's just bound to happen. There are like more champs that are taken off the board, right?
What about...
that's where...
Go ahead.
Sorry. No, I was going to say that's where I agree with it being like cool in theory that it can give you these opportunities, but it does it through like a pretty ad hoc staple on top of draft way that like, and I'm not of the opinion that the game is poorly balanced at all. I think there's other things at play that I will save for other.
A lot of people talk about Fearless Draft, but not as many people talk about Ultimate Bravery. When do you think we could get Ultimate Bravery implemented in League of Legends?
Yeah, that'd be really fun to watch once, and then you're like, this is our whole season. Oh my god.
Yeah.
I've also talked with Travis during the interview before, talking about how like there's other trade-offs, like the Fearless thing or the flex pick thing, like you're talking about. I also think adaptation just dies. Like if someone slams a Fiora out of nowhere and it's really good, it's like, well, thank God I don't have to deal with that ever again. Whereas like in current drafting, it's like, how do I adapt my draft to what they just did? Like, you literally throw out adaptation as a concept with Fearless. It's just like, what's the next best thing?
Yeah, there's something else where it's like, I found that red side was more valuable early in a series and blue side more valuable later because it's the only way you can get access to some blinds. And if you burn your blinds earlier on blue side, so like you can get your blinds later on in the draft too in Fearless. It was kind of like a weird strategy thing, but yeah, there's like a bunch of like really niche things in it that make it kind of weird.
Yeah, I can see that. There's probably a lot of like meta implications that, you know, because it's only been adopted in a couple places, it's not
figured out yet.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Isn't this kind of a moot point though? Because I don't know how we would implement Fearless Draft in best of one, which the LCS
but if it's not best of ones, Travis, it becomes an option, you know?
No, but I actually agree with Travis's point here, which is like Fearless as a concept is extremely limiting in how you build it. Like we were just saying with like, are you doing super Fearless or regular Fearless? One works better in best of 3, one works better in best of 5. Also, neither work in best of 1. So if you want champion diversity, you can, and you know, like that's something you care about, then like you can never do best of 1s. And some people never want best of 1, so like it's totally fine for them. But you know, I think still there's value in best of 1s in terms of like every team plays every day, so your fans get exposed to them. You know, it's easier to storytell in that way. I think it can keep upsets exciting. I think for, you know, like certain group stages of play, it's especially really good. You know, it's a lot easier. This is a cynical one, but it's easier to sell tickets if everyone wants to buy a ticket because every team's going to be there that day versus like, well, I don't care about these teams that day, so I'm not going to buy tickets. You know, like there's a lot of like when you really break it down and start getting into every element of it, I think, you know, there's a lot of other considerations.
I agree. Best ones are superior to your point. All right. Let's call her. I know we had you talk a lot early on, but we didn't have you chime in too much on the Fearless Draft stuff. Any thoughts on the Fearless Draft before we give you your shoutouts?
I mean, I would just add that I think Mark was kind of alluding to this at one point. A lot of the reason why the people don't play multiple champs is not because it's not balanced, but because it's a lot easier to specialize at like 3 champions and then not learn how to play anything else, and so they just do that. Do you have any thoughts on that? That this would kind of force them out of like, because I think that's important because they will never, ever, ever learn to play more champions if you don't make them. And I think that's why I think it's kind of important to force them. Do you have any
And
thoughts on
so
that?
many people have these such you actually it's mostly our caller, you have so many definitive statements about our pro players. No pro player takes scrims seriously. No pro player will ever learn another champion unless you brute force them by preventing them from being able to play it in a game.
Yeah,
They
no,
must be tied
I'll
down.
take that. I'm exaggerating a bit, but I think the general point is still true.
I mean,
Why
I
does
think
everybody
there's a
think this
reason
is
people-
fucking true? We have a bunch of pro players. Like, some pro players have limited champion pools. Some have giant, champion oceans. Like, what are you guys talking about?
I've heard I watch a lot of pro players on Twitch, and they all say that the reason that they don't play, that they don't learn new champs is because they're already good at the one that they're playing, and it's not worth taking the chance for like a temporary meta, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I will say, to be fair to pro players in that instance, like when you learn a champ on a professional level, it's not like learning a champ to like go fuck around with at home. It's like that is like I learn what my buttons do, and maybe I learned a couple basic combos. Learning a champion at a professional level is like learning it into all the meta matchups. Like what can they possibly pick into me? Like you realistically want not just solo queue time, but scrim time into every single like prevalent matchup of a new champion that you might run into. And then sometimes there's weird interactions like, oh, this support is actually super fucking annoying for my top laner to play into because he just does this thing and it counters me in team fights. Like there's a lot of complexity to the game. And anytime you try and pick up a new champion, you have to learn that complexity. Pro players should do that. That is their job, to be able to play the best champions well. But there is a reason that like truly learning a new champion is, a bigger ask than it initially.
All right. Well, caller, thank you so much for the take, and I do appreciate it because like as much as people want to be like, yo, I don't like this take, this is unreasonable, but like when we don't, as Mark well knows, and I'm sure Cubby has picked up now, whenever you take calls that people think, oh, that's reasonable, people go, oh, that episode was uninteresting. So like you kind of have to find more off the wall takes, and I would say yours maybe a little off the wall. But anything that you want to shout out here at the end?
Yeah, I want you to find the magical format where we cut off the bad teams early so we get to see more of the good teams. And I want you to tell us about that so that way all of my fellow idiots can support that. And
Wait,
that is all.
isn't
Thank
that
you.
isn't that the?
That's
Are you
just
familiar
LEC.
with the LEC format?
That it does not cut off nearly early enough.
Oh, you want
It's
you
3
want
weeks.
you want the
No.
You want
Throw them
like
out.
fucking Valorant in here where you get 2 best of 3s and then you're just gonzo?
Yeah, if they're not good. Bye.
Okay. All right. I don't know if a franchise league would like
You're
that. But,
a maniac.
Or you
appreciate
can take the
boldness.
okay bro, or you can be okay bro. Then you can stay.
I mean, Fred Brion is. Very
What if
fun.
we
I'll
just
take it.
didn't have bad teams in the league? Like
Okay, I'll take that.
we just cut some more. We already cut 2 teams. Why not
Yo,
we get down
Mark,
to
can
6?
we get T1 and NA, please? We need better teams in the league. All right.
All right, caller.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you for your take. I will work on finding that magical format that
Thank you for letting me
requires
out.
changing the nature of time and reality. We'll catch you next time. All right.
Dude, we just hate bad teams and we hate pros that don't put in the work to pick more champs up.
I know what Mark means whenever
Yeah.
he says that like the LCS fan just has to deal with so much shit because it's just everybody comes out of the woodwork to just kick the shit out of LCS. Oh, the fans don't scrim. The fans, the
Hey, you think they want to black out any games in LCK, Mark? Huh?
blackout. We
Black
got to
out
black
any of
out
those
games.
Those non-shim shitters.
We got a fearless draft.
Do people? Maybe they do. I don't know. To be honest, part of that's me talking out my ass because I'm on Reddit. I don't know what Korean fans are probably pretty out there too. I don't know. Well, actually, I guess I'm saying
they'll
the
send you some
fans.
goddamn trucks, Mark.
Yeah, no, the fans get hyphy there, but I don't know if like the content creators get hyphy.
Can anybody tell me? I
Conversations.
was having this conversation last week. I went on a hike with a friend, and we were discussing like, can you not do trucks in the U.S. the way that they do? Because they do so many trucks. We were talking about the fact that in Nikkei, which is a very embarrassing mobile game that my friend got me into, fans are upset that they're going to change they could potentially change the free-to-play system in a way that's not great for free-to-play fans. So they sent trucks to the headquarters of the company. And I was laughing at the fact that free-to-play fans would rather spend money on trucks defending the free-to-play, making sure that the free-to-play stays that good, than actually just spend the money if the free-to-play change system happens. And then I was like, could I put a truck in front of the LCS headquarters that says like Fire MarkZ and hire Travis Gafford for the LCS commissioner role that everybody thinks that I'm constantly trying to.
I mean, they must, because like in Vegas they always have like trucks with like advertising on them. It just might not be that there's that many in LA and that makes them expensive or something. I don't know.
I've wept like a child when my team wins, and I've wept out of anger when my team loses. I don't think I could ever spend money to actually send a fucking truck to my team. But
what if it was like $10?
Honestly, that's pretty tempting because it gets a lot of coverage. Maybe that's how I make it big.
Well, I think they pool their money together though, Cubby, right? So it's like $10 for you because you get 30 fans all spend $300 to get this truck out in front.
Yeah, I don't know.
I still I have to really question the principles of my fandom if I'm sending a truck about a fucking draft in front of T1. If they had Fearless Draft, would we get more or less trucks? I feel like that's the real question we should be asking right now.
I want to send a truck in front of the LCS studio whenever there are the off weeks that say end the 3-week break mark. I just want that truck out in front of the studio.
And I'll climb on top of that truck and cross out the 3 and put 2.
Usually it's I believe it's an LED. Mark, I don't think you can cross
send the
out.
Truck.
How many
get
days?
The number of weeks right.
How many days from the last day of LCS to the first day of LCS after the break, Mark?
How many days are there between most weeks of broadcast?
5.
And how is that closer to 7 or is that closer to 0?
It's closer to 7.
So do you say there's a week break every time that the LCS?
Yeah, pretty much.
I agree. I agree.
All right.
On broadcast, we see you next week.
Yeah, and we'll see you after a 2-week break.
All right, I'm gonna run a poll right now.
19 days, Mark.
The Survivor is not a weekly show. It's off every single week because it's 6 weeks.
I've got a poll up right now for is it a 2-week break or a 3-week break? Please vote in the Twitch
guys.
chat.
Is it 99 cents or is it $1?
Yeah,
dude, I'm telling you,
this is breaking,
how
Mark.
It feels to fans. I'm not saying that like how it feels is not like it feels like a 3-week break, but when you're communicating schedules to people, you cannot say you're
You have
off.
2 weekends off.
Mark,
Yeah,
look,
2 weekends off.
Mark, do you see the
break,
poll on
works.
Twitch right now?
Yeah, I don't. There's nothing you can say that convinces me I'm wrong because this is how you communicate schedules.
I just want all of you to know
take
that
2 Saturdays off and then you come back on the 3rd Saturday. It's a 2-week break.
I just
There's 2
want
weeks of
everyone
shows
to
missing.
know that this is like this drives Mark insane. There was a moment like a week or 2 ago where he was in my living room screaming while Kobe and I were hanging out with him about the 3-week break versus 2-week break.
But you're forgetting the part where Kobe was also screaming in agreement.
Kobe's in chat says 07, Mark. Yeah, exactly. Kobe in the chat. He said I voted 2-week break.
yeah. You're really laying out the details of this story.
Mark, Mark's talking.
This is the LCS half glass full or half glass empty test right here.
Mark has talked a lot about stats today in both his video, his article, and then here. And I just want to give you all a stat. More than 2/3 of this audience agrees it's a 3-week break.
You have 2 weekends off. That's it. You can keep 2 with that.
All right. We're going to take a quick break to talk about our sponsor. Our sponsor is none other than you. That's right. During the cold days of esports winter, Mark is getting up. He doesn't want to hear this. During the cold days of esports winter, I am burning your subs and your YouTube memberships to keep myself warm.
To watch Fallout.
And to watch Fallout. Every now and then I toss Cubby, a sub, a leftover sub that you have sent in me.
I get some charcoal.
Yeah, he gets after I have burned your subs to keep myself warm in esports winter, I chuck the embers over to Cubby in the corner and he gets to help himself, a
I
little
can
bit.
turn on my AC those days.
Ward off the hypothermia. The AC? No, we're trying. That's the opposite direction, Cubby. The metaphor is that you'd be turning on the heater.
Oh, I mean, either way, I'm burning energy.
Yes.
That's what's important. Yeah.
Either way, Numi just put the link tree over in the Twitch chat. I think. Yep. She also put it over in the YouTube chat for folks who want to check that out. If you are listening to the podcast, you can find that in the link in the description of the podcast stuff, I believe. Please let me know if it isn't there. And then also, if you're watching over on YouTube after the fact, there's a link there as well. But there's a link tree. There's a bunch of different ways to support me through that link tree. You can sub on Twitch. You can purchase a YouTube membership. I've got a wish list on Amazon, which I haven't updated in forever. And there's some magic stuff, but also some gear, I guess. Some PayPal thing. A bunch of different ways. So I need to put like some sort of, I don't know, I need to find like random games that I play and put referral links there or something too. Just a bunch of different ways to do support. So yeah, if you'd like to do that, that is fine. I had somebody scream at me in the YouTube comments. I think it was either last week or the week before. I might have even mentioned this last week. I'm sorry if I did, but like say, Travis, just go get a sponsor. How are you not getting a sponsor? I promise you, we're working on it. I've been saying that for a while. There's just a lot of people cutting back on a lot of things. I talked to somebody recently who said, yeah, we're looking more to do stuff in Valorant than League these days. And I thought, wow, it's everywhere. Anyway, thank you so much to everyone who subs or becomes a member over on YouTube or Twitch or clicks the link tree to find other ways to support. I do really appreciate it. Ooh, dude upstairs with 5 gifted. Thank you. Scam train is starting. That's very hype. Let's get into the next call. Off Cubby goes.
Dude, I almost opened up Discord on reflex.
Really?
Yeah.
To go to the waiting room and grab somebody? That would have been very funny.
Pavlovian dog training. Oh, read's over. Get the next call
300 episodes of Mark knows it's time to go get the next call.
It's time to deprogram it. It takes a minute.
Snow Leopard is here. Or Snow Leopard over on YouTube sent a $20 super chat. Says, Mark, do something where the teams play each other from home to have League for people to watch instead of having nothing to watch at all. Oh, this was back when we were talking about the break. King Manchi with the 5 gifted memberships. Thank you, King Manchi, for the 5. I really appreciate it. We've got some more subs over on Twitch that I will shout out here in a second. But first, we got our next caller here. Caller, what's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hello. I'm Wakalino. I'm from Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Ooh, you're very quiet. Can you get a little closer to your mic?
Milwaukee?
Hello. Is that better?
Yeah.
You're still really quiet. Maybe you can speak up and get really close to your mic, but not like too close.
Milwaukee
Okay,
question. Are we a fan of the harp?
The harp.
Yes.
I don't really go to bars. I walk past that sometimes.
Best bar in the city. Anyway, keep going.
So sorry, what's your and what's one more time? What's your name?
Wakalino.
Wakalino. And what do you want to talk about on the show?
It's a little similar to the first take, but my take is there any plans to have anything broadcasted on like the regular scheduled days during the break that the games would be? And even if it's just like one day of the break I'm a 2-week break enjoyer. If there's just one day that the LCS has something on broadcast, I think that would really help the fans hold over during the break.
Well, so we did do the co-stream of NACL, which I think we could execute a little bit better, and I think maybe there's other things we can do, but we did try a little something. It's kind of what I said about show matches and stuff. Like, people, what they really want is the competition, and so I think we can make things that to help hardcore fans to stay brought over. I think we can do more if there are ever breaks, but like looking back at this one, I think it's something that we wish we did better. Is have more like general content for LCS fans, but yeah, and I kind of talked about this in the first call.
And then just to like differentiate, I guess, from the first call, do you believe that this is more on the LCS to fill the break, or do you think teams should have more opportunity or step up more to try to fill in that gap with the help of the LCS? I know FlyQuest did it, but to me they were the villains of split, so kind of skipped out on that one. Every split for me to keep interested needed to have the villains. Last split C9, so I just didn't feel like, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's ultimately, at the end of the day, the LCS is positioned to fill those. Like, we're the ones who decided to do a break versus start late versus end early or any of these other things, and so at the end of the day, it's going to be on us to make sure that our fans are happy. So I think it's ultimately on us. I think we can also help the teams out maybe more in different ways if they are interested. But it's if they're interested. I don't think we can be like, you have to do it or we're gonna fine you or something. So it's just like not how rules and things are written currently.
Well, there you go. Quick take. I know we talked a little bit about this earlier, so it's not like we need to super dive into it all over again. But I do appreciate the idea of, hey, maybe having something broadcast during the break is an interesting way of going at. So, caller, anything you want to shout out?
Shout out the decreased time in between the games. That's the only thing I've noticed different, and it's awesome. That's literally, if Mark just said that's all he did this whole time as his run as commissioner, I'd be like, he's the best one. So,
awesome. Well, thank you so much for the call, and we'll catch you next time.
thank you.
Okay. All right. We have a bit of a
That was a quickie.
Well, there's just not. I mean, we obviously
Yeah.
talked a little bit about the break earlier, so I'm sure that there's like less that we can talk about now.
Yeah, and it's like I said, something that's like it's not controversial or really debatable.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
we could have done a better job there. I think we all kind of feel that.
Yeah. All right. Mark, do you know that your emote is actually still one of the most used emotes on my channel? It's very funny. I got a Twitch
The one
stat
that
thing.
Rico's
already.
using.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Cubby's grabbing the next caller. Thank you to Decimiah for the 5 gifted. Joe Badiah for 3 years. Showtime for 6 months. Joe Goat, thanks for gifting the sub. To Maine with a tier 2. Thank you for the tier 2. I really appreciate it. Concern K, Proto, Leisure Suit Hulk, Your First Hooker. D Fitch with the 40 months. Tennis Guru, Just Mobile Gamer, Rico Suave, and Raz gifted a sub to Sar Travis. So that's very appreciated. Caller, what's your name and where are you calling from? Ooh.
From Baltimore, Maryland.
What? Sorry, what was that?
ppdoc. Calling from Baltimore.
Caller, I
Oh
think
my
your
lord.
microphone is having some issues. What, Cubby, was this happening at all
Or
on the
your
radio?
internet. I don't know.
No, it was good.
Oh, okay.
But-
All right.
All right.
I moved it back to the waiting room. I don't know what's going on there.
Well, we have another caller that I can drag on in, and we can just go from there real
Sure.
quick.
Yeah, I
Hold
was
on.
gonna say I'm down to try again after we check.
Yeah,
with
yeah.
him.
Well, I'll ping him. We'll try
otherwise,
again in a sec.
otherwise, yeah, maybe we can just have you rep his take.
All right, we're using.
Yeah, we can do that.
We'll try again in a second, and then if it doesn't work, then yeah, we'll have Cubby rep the take. But we had an emergency caller come in. Oh, Cubby, where'd Cubby go? Oh, Cubby's working on it. We had an
I think
emergency
he's
caller
over.
join up right now. Oh, I don't know what's going on.
Okay.
There's some weirdness happening in Discord. I'm gonna go back to
David Shynock ran away. Where'd he
yeah,
go?
I think Cubby's pulling him into another channel to make sure that he's his audio and everything is fine.
Okay.
Anonymous gifter gifted a sub to Briar Feet Gobbler. Dude upstairs gifted 5 subs. I'm Pharaoh. Thank you for the prime. Jack gifted 5 subs. Thanks, Jack.
All right. We unfortunately ppdoc's mic is not exactly where it needs to be for this one.
All right. Well, do we have
owned.
another? Can maybe we switch to another caller?
Yeah, I can grab another caller real quick.
Okay, cool. We'll do that.
Okay, other caller. You were in the call.
David is here. David, where are you calling from?
Calling from Jersey City, New Jersey. How you doing?
Good, good. What do you want to talk about on the show? I know you had a list of 4 takes that you put on Twitter very dramatically, so I'm wondering which ones you have narrowed down to.
I was
Dun, dun,
specifically
dun.
I was specifically asked to have one, and that is, what's the internal sentiment around the LCS Spring Finals in studio for 2025, or will we see a return to road shows and no longer see any finals in studio?
No longer see any finals in studio.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie to you. I don't ever want to see it in studio ever again.
Well, okay, I see what you mean. Sorry, I
You had it
in my head, I
inverted in your
flipped
mind.
those
Yeah.
around. Yeah. Well, part of this I can say is 2025 planning, which starts now, but we don't have anything to share about 2025 spring currently. So I think if the never see it again, I can't commit to that or say that that's even the current trajectory. But good to know that's where you're at. Current thinking on how it went. I think it's a question of, well, I think the event could have been better. I think there's things that we could have executed on better to make it, especially for fans at the venue, maybe some things we can do in the future. I think for online fans, it was hopefully decent with like the opening ceremony and these sorts of things. I think we had some sentiment data from the fans who attended. It was positive. We have like surveys out and stuff like that. Very much so, at least. And so I think I understand where fans are coming from, where it's what they expected after years and years and years and years of every regional finals being in a venue. But unfortunately, it's one of the things that, with a lot of the changes that happened in spring, to try and reach sustainability and those sorts of things, was one of the changes that was made. And that.
Can I just follow up on that specific point? It's something that Travis called out, and it's something I think the majority of the community said as well. Is like, I get sentiment around like the finals itself in the studio may have been good, because like the show itself could be fine, but like I know you're not going to be able to speak to budgetary concerns. That's not something you can speak about publicly. But what, like, we have not seen finals even go to like 1,000-person theater. So like when you talk about expectations of the past, I don't think anybody's expecting, you know, the Houston Texans stadium anymore. Like there's a general understanding that we're not at that point anymore. But why can't we have even smaller things?
So I think I would say there's a question of, if you have X amount to play with, is it better to blow it out and make the one thing you're going to do baller, and the other one, you know, it is what it is. And, you know, you can mitigate it a little bit by, like, I think what you and Travis often suggest is like, keep it in LA and put it in a 500,000 person venue, and use what you could have spent on opening acts on just like the venue cost or something. Like, if you were going to take exactly the same budget and try and translate it over, you'd have to trim some of the things we did for spring here by keeping it in-house. So you would see even a more scaled down thing to put in that venue. Maybe for some fans that's the right call. Maybe for others it's not. If it's like, all right, there's no fan fest and there's nothing to do, and you just show up and you watch the games and you go home, you know, like, is that really better for those fans? Maybe it's better for online. You start getting into these kinds of conversations. And, you know, I don't know, to be honest. It's something that probably will be discussed in 2025 planning. But I would not say definitively one way or the other.
I mean, I think that it's a tough situation, because I think everybody understands that there needs to be some sort of scaling back, and that we've seen this in a lot of different ways, and certainly in ways that you can't probably comment on this episode. But I understand sort of the question of, hey, can we do something that is a little bit in between what we've had in the past and what we saw in spring, which is the specific, you know, just staying in the studio type thing. And I do wonder, Mark, do you think something like that is possible? You know, is it in your mind a situation where, you know, if you see an LCS finals, do you think that there is a way in which you can do it in a smaller space that only has like a couple thousand people? Or is it a type of kind of all or nothing thing?
Again, like, some of this also depends on, you know, like how you budget things and what you plan on doing. I think it's possible to do it in, like, this is me speaking personally, not like as product here. Like, I think you can do it. I don't know, speaking as product, if that's actually better for everyone, because to the point of like, okay, let's see, again, you have a certain amount of money to play with. Maybe fans do not care about an opening ceremony or some of the things that you usually spend your money on to make the thing hype. Lasers, light show, pre-planning special graphics packages, devoting time and resources into building that. And you're like, nah, what actually matters is just a fucking bigger theater. Maybe that's what we, like, fans actually only care about. But maybe you do that then, and the show feels really empty and hollow because you didn't fill it with like this hype content, because you spent your budget. Because at the end of the day, you're playing with the same pool of money in this theory, right? And, you know, to be honest, I don't know if that would make fans more upset to go somewhere and have it feel potentially hollow, versus like, yeah, it was in a theater, but at least they did some cool stuff and tried to deliver the hype there. You know, it's a to me at least an open question.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey, David, anything you want to shout out here at the end?
No, just shout out to the New York City League of Legends scene that we got going on here. I really hope that at some point the LCS does a watch party affiliate program that partners with various different locations. We would love to work with the league itself to help give fans a place to watch beyond just YouTube and Twitch. Not sure if your head of household viewership would capture that number or not, but it's a great way to watch it. So shout out to anybody that ever watches League of Legends in person.
Very good. Thanks so much for the call, and we'll catch you next time.
Thank you.
I do want to add that.
Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
So that was similar to ppdoc's take, who couldn't make it on. And ppdoc wanted to say that it is Testicular Cancer Awareness Month, and it's important for our audience and viewers to know that it is the most common cancer in men aged 20 to 40. That all men should perform monthly testicular self-exams and notify a doctor if something feels off. Cure rates are above 95%, so screening is imperative. Thanks, mate.
So just to be clear, this you missed the other context, which if it's not obvious from their name, ppdoc is a urologist.
Yeah.
So ppdoc was the caller that we tried to get on just before this. We couldn't get them on because of audio issues. We had David come on to talk about roadshows and shows instead, and this was going to be ppdoc's shout out, which I think is actually kind of cool. So I appreciate that. And ppdoc has called in a lot in previous episodes, especially in the last, I don't know, few months or so, I remember. So it's kind of cool that
yourself, you know?
our resident urologist of the show would like to spread a message raising awareness of testicular cancer awareness, which I did not realize is the most common cancer in men aged 20 to 40. And
I didn't either. That's good stuff.
Now you know.
Anyway, back to watch parties, you know?
Yes.
Half the battle, knowing. So I was going to chime in because I know David was also a big Easter person. That was a comment also in the video. There was my initial article when I wrote this was 8 pages long.
Nice.
That was my initial script, and I responded to like every part of community conversation, and then we pulled out the ones that were more like somewhat niche. That not that like Reddit doesn't care or like the internet doesn't care, but like the average LCS fan might. It's already pretty dense, and it's like this would just start getting lost in the weeds. So that was like the co-streaming demographic conversation was like one of the things we pulled, but I had thoughts on it, and I don't know if I delivered my point very well tonight. Maybe I should do a better job of saying like why I don't want to get into specific yes/no questions, because it just can keep going. Same way when someone asks like for spoilers in a show, like did this character die? No. Well, maybe this one. No. And then like, so I don't want to keep, but one of the other ones was the Easter thing. And I think the Easter situation was an interesting one because this was also a Reddit comment that I knew would come up. Our peaks were down, but Easter was also when finals was last year. So I don't think you can blame it for that. And the peaks problem, we actually identified immediately in round 1 of playoffs when it didn't go up quite the way that it typically does. And I think, you know, we've had a lot of conversations about what it could be. You know, like a lot of our changes were focused on regular season with live patch and transitions, and that's at least how I've been talking a lot. And maybe that was like too much of a product focus on regular season stuff versus postseason, or all these sorts of things we can debate. But I don't think the Easter situation was a problem. And I also had like, so I think year over year it wouldn't manifest then, but it did. So it speaks to a different concern. Separately from that, I do think in general we should try to not be on Easter, like if we had to be. And I think maybe with some slightly more clever scheduling, we could have avoided it, and it wouldn't have been a bad. Like I don't think it was bad to be on Easter directly, but it's also not like inherently good. So if you can avoid it, you probably should. And I think that was maybe something with some lessons I personally learned, and some other like that maybe we could have been a little shiftier with how we had initially scheduled things without incurring too many extra costs, like elongating the season in like a tricky way that doesn't actually add more show days. I think we could have done some stuff like that that, you know, I wish we had been able to do, but just you know, at some point you have to lock in your schedule, and you've been going over like 50 different scenarios, and you're like, shit, all right, let's go here. And like we knew it was on Easter, we knew that was going to be the case. We did some analysis of last year's like AMA compared to the peaks, and like the ratio was not out of whack compared to like what happened in 2022 and other years. So that's why we felt like it wasn't going to be an issue. And I would say it's the fact that it was different this time is like, well, probably wasn't Easter then, it's probably something else. So, anyways, that's my Easter thoughts.
Is
since,
there
no one
well
asked, but-
to your point, Mark? Like I know that it is kind of goofy to say like, oh, see, viewership was down or peak viewership was down for this finals compared to last finals, and so it's Easter. When, as you pointed out, last year was also on Easter, so you're comparing one Easter to another. Is there any other major thing you can think of that was this finals had that the last finals didn't have that might have contributed to the viewership? Any other major change between last spring finals to this spring finals that could have had some role in a change of viewership?
Are you talking about Cloud9 not being in the finals?
No, well, that's one example. I was thinking, is there anything else? I'm just trying to rack my brain about last spring finals versus this spring finals. That
I'm trying.
I was in
I
Vegas
feel like
for
I
last
missed.
spring finals.
I feel like I'm missing something obvious, and you're gonna. Oh, roadshow. Is that it?
Oh yeah. Oh, actually, that's a really good point,
Oh, for
Mark.
real?
Last year did have a big venue and a really cool show, and this year was just in the studio. It's hard. It's really so many variables, you know.
It's potential, but at least for that one, you can look at LEC data points and try and start doing more looking at that kind of stuff. And I think it is worth a deeper dive. I think I had said this I recorded the dive a little bit this morning. I did like a little talk on that part too, and it was like I was watching all the other regional finals, and they have like so much history. Like this is a very like new LCS split in a number of ways. Like we have a ton of rookies who have kind of taken the center stage to the conversation. It's not Double If Bjergsen. And we have new teams that have joined us recently, and TSM is gone, Bjergsen's gone, Double If's gone. Like these kinds of names that you rely on to bring in the numbers are just not there. And then I'm like, well, there's G2 Fnatic and there's T1 Gen G, and so like it is something where I think the LCS has a very strong fan base that actively watches week over week. But I don't know, like we need to build up us as a brand having like these other things, and that's where we can also do a better job of target.
Really quickly before we move on to this, Barris Aurelius, because I know you kind of danced around this, Mark, but here's this very direct question on the Easter thing. Barris Aurelius in the chat says, why risk losing viewers when you could have just changed the week of finals? There's zero reason to have the finals on Easter when you own the venue, no? So it's that kind of like, why not just change the week of finals 5-head?
Well, so I guess the question is like, do you want a break week? I think a break week in your playoffs is probably less feels good than Easter.
I will say that teams don't like that, but also
no,
the
dude,
week
it's
before
awful.
for playoffs-
That's my point, right? Is that like
Yeah.
you would not want to do
Friday,
semifinals and then
Saturday.
have a 2-week break. I think didn't CBLOL have that and it was like controversial. I feel like I saw somebody tweeting about that, but
yeah. So like you could do that. To your point, Cubby, you could put it before playoffs start, but then you would have had a 2-week break into 2 weeks on to a break off, and it just felt like too many breaks.
For me, it's just you Friday, Saturday. I don't know what Valorant's schedule was like, but it would at least make sure it's not on Easter Sunday, where you're ultimately going to get some people that want to tune in that are going to travel to be with families that day. Like, I don't think it's massive crossover, but there's going to be some, just given it's a big holiday, right?
Some,
yeah.
I would speculate based off the data I've looked at is that a Friday that randomly happens is probably more harmful to your viewership than Easter.
It was Friday, Saturday, the week leading into the Easter week, though, too. So at least would have been somewhat consistent there.
Yeah, and I would say that probably wasn't very, like, not that we could have done anything about that, but like looking at the viewership from Friday compared to Saturday that week, and on Thursday, Friday the week before, because we also had that for playoffs. Like, I think Saturday, Sundays is good. I think
Steph Curry's #1 fan in the chat says, bro, there was a 2-week break. Who cares? Just have a break before playoffs. This is the thing where people don't, I think about the two columns of trade-offs, right? So like pro con in that situation, your finals is no longer on Easter. Con, you have a giant 2-week break between what I would say a 2-week break between the regular split and playoffs. And then you still have semifinals on Easter. So now you're shifting your bad viewership to semifinals, and you're creating this extra gap between it. Like, it's just, I don't think people do enough of a thought process on, like, well, to your point, Mark, on like, if you just shift one thing, obviously there's like an effect, a fall off effect on other things too.
Yeah, and given that like the big, and the reason we addressed this one in the article versus like other things people talk about. The reason we talked about the break week was because it was literally the biggest feedback from the split that everyone basically said was like, hey, I saw tons of comments. I was like, this is the best split the LCS has ever had, except I hated that break week thing, you know? And I'm like, so, you know, the fix to Easter being just make another break doesn't seem to hold up to me as like what would be a good solution.
Yeah.
So yeah,
All right.
I think of the lesser evils, Easter initially seemed like that. Maybe we could have been a little more clever, but you know,
we have 2 more calls and we're running low on time, so we need to go grab the next caller.
All right.
Yeah. But
It's only
I'm
one
happy
more
we're
too,
getting
because the other
into-
one's ppdoc. So this is our last caller.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Thank you to Little Sleepy for the 11 months. Really appreciate it. Yeah, and shout out C9 Jack, who did gift 5 subs earlier. He's been active in the chat. You know, Mark shows up and suddenly all the team owners and team leadership and Riot, you suddenly get all these industry people watching. Where are all of you in my other weeks, you know? Actually, I'm just kidding. A lot of them do show up here. I think including Jack at times. Icebreaker, where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Indianapolis, Indiana.
Indianapolis. What do you want to talk about on the show?
I guess this is kind of just an easy round-out question for the episode for Mark. You know, coming away from your first split as the commissioner, what was the biggest surprise to you that happened this split, and either good or bad, small or big, and going forward, what's your takeaway from it?
Biggest surprise. God, I mean, I
Was
don't
it
know.
C9 not making finals, Mark?
I guess I'm totally thinking about just the business side. Maybe there's some surprising things. Like TL winning was a surprise. Like, I like those guys, but shit, I didn't think they were gonna do it. I don't know if there was like anything that was super surprising. I feel like the biggest surprise, like those sorts of things, were within my first like week and a half of onboarding and just learning a lot of like higher level stuff about how LCS operates and like all those sorts of things. But like I can't say what that is here, you know. But like yeah, just like that stuff was maybe the biggest thing, because I think the other things I was at least somewhat aware of, having worked on the product for so long and in different roles. Like,
what about like a big win that you did not expect? Or you know, yeah.
I guess that is the biggest surprise, is that there were some like lumps and like things that, you know, fans didn't like or whatever, but I don't think we had anything that like was a controversy that we didn't see coming, mostly, you know.
Wait, you're telling me that you didn't see like a random double lift comment in the split being a controversy?
The dodo thing. He's referencing.
Yeah, I mean, I guess
you
like
could have predicted that. Wow.
No, but to Mark's point, Mark and I have talked about how like in some ways this was the least dramatic split in years. Like,
it was
because normally
like,
I was thinking about this at one point in time where like normally or halfway through the split I was like, wow, I haven't had like a crazy episode of Hotline League where I'm addressing like a insane controversy, you know, where like a player who was supposed to be a superstar gets kicked like the 3rd week of the split, or you have some crazy situation where a team is like, I don't know, caught in some drama or something. Like there was just not really anything like that, which allowed everybody to kind of focus on the games. But I'm sure, Mark, you probably expected after years and years of us covering this shit that there'd be some massive blow up that would happen that you'd have to like move around.
Yeah, whether we somehow put our foot in our mouth, or like, you know, a pro player does something, or yeah, like you said, even just like a coach gets fired because the team's underperforming. Like there's always I always feel like there's some controversy, and it just wasn't really.
No player walkouts, no academy teams disappearing, no voting to lift the import rule, no, you know, like all these things that have happened.
Refusing
the
to
past
shake
years.
hands,
yeah.
you know.
Oh, I mean, that's not. I think that's as big of a deal as some of the other ones we've had in the past.
Yeah, that's like a big deal. We're like, oh God, what are the fans going to think about, you know, this sort of thing?
Yeah.
Like I said, there were some controversies, but they were not like surprises that like, you know, were not planned in some way. Like the break, you know, like we knew that was coming. We knew fans wouldn't like it. Yeah. So no, I don't think I have anything that was like super surprising. I think learnings, there's just a shit ton of learnings about things that, you know, we can do better, and things that we hopefully will do better on in summer.
Because obviously we focus a lot in spring, but what are some of the learnings from this that you're excited to tackle for summer?
I think I'm some. So I think planning somewhat. When I say planning, like we came in, we made a lot of big changes, and a lot of this split was like, I think these were the right bets to make, but it was kind of like ship built in midair on some of them. Like I think the comp ops team did, and the engineers and tech and everyone did a great job making live patch and the transition times and like these sorts of things get through. And I spent a lot of time on comms about how to get this information out and like, but I didn't plan as much on some other areas that I think I can focus more on for summer, and we as a team can focus more on. You know,
Is there anything like obviously you can't like spill the secret sauce, but like is there anything that you can share with folks like that is a focus for you guys in summer? Because I feel like one of the biggest wins from this split, I'm seeing in chat, and I know from talking with talent and just in general, like it was pretty positive. Like sentiment around the LCS was good this year, and that was like really fun. So like, is there anything moving into summer that like you're looking to kind of capitalize off of, or is something that fans can maybe look forward to?
like yes, but not something I want to say here. No offense. This is
Yeah, I know. Best of threes. This isn't the spot to leak it. I'm sorry, Mark. It's not as big of a platform as it was when you were on here as a co-host.
No, just anything. Content plans, like I wouldn't leak pros. Like pros was a great product that we launched. I think it's one of the things that we're most proud of this split.
That was a huge win.
Yeah, I'm not going to be like, hey guys, at the end of Hotline League, we're doing more pros or this new show that we're cooking up. Like I don't think.
Yeah. I mean, like a focus though. Like it's like any like theme or anything like you're hoping to accomplish. I don't know.
So I think we did a good job at some points in the split tying game moment things into the broadcast to make it fun, or utilizing us to like highlight game things. Like Skarner with our pros, I think was really cool. I think the Orin thing was cool. Like those sorts of things that should just get fans temporarily excited about the LCS. I think we want to keep doing more of that and have like more plays in the playbook, so to speak, where like if it's a skin or a champion or this or that, we have some ideas, but like it's not like finalized yet.
I mean, I'm somewhat surprised, Mark, that you didn't talk about that in the earlier call when people were talking, or when I think it was Rico who was asking about like getting younger people in, and you were discussing like, okay, we have this big player base of league audience. How do we get them to watch the LCS? Like, I thought those were really great moments where like an LCS fan can be excited to see Captain Flowers freaking out about the orange skin and maybe get like more drawn into the broadcast, or the pros talking about Skarner stuff.
Well, yeah, and I guess like those are the sorts of things when we say like we're more thinking about how we can get more League of Legends fans just watching the LCS rather than like a younger demographic. Like I think a younger demographic is.
I mean,
great,
you dropped a ton of skins. I didn't get any, Mark, which I was gonna not bring up here, but you were dropping skins to get some more people.
Yeah, I mean, well,
that's good.
Everyone's got a drops campaign. I think we just. I think that's a good example of a learning where like we had drops on week 1, 2, and finals week, but it was actually that week that we saw the most like impact in terms of new viewers to the watch.lowlysports.lcs or whatever. So like having a coherent marketing campaign around that is I think something we want to do in the future rather than just being like drops are back. Like I think sometimes that can land a little flat for people who don't utilize drops. So there's like a lot of like little learnings like that across the way that hopefully in aggregate mean really enjoyable big things for fans.
What has it been like for you to see the fans get so excited about so many of the changes that you've made? Because you've been sitting on the sidelines for a long time. You've made content. You've been here. You've been like a pundit alongside me. And you go in, you start making changes, and I realize it's the whole team, and it's the production team, and the partnerships team, and the comms team, and blah, blah, blah. But you see a lot of folks who like the best of 3 stuff, which I know you can't comment on, but I know you read the Reddit threads for, and the top comment and one of them was like, I would get on my knees for MarkZ, which I assume is a reference to fellatio. And I have to ask, like, what is it like for you to see so many people just get really excited about a lot of the changes that you've made and or possibly are going to change?
I don't know. Feels good. Everyone's a little bit of a narcissist, right? You like hearing people say you're doing a good job. But I am someone who just like generally is more driven by the stick than the carrot. So like I get
we should
like,
shit on
angry.
you more.
I get angry energy, yeah. Like when I fuck up, I'm like, God damn it, I can't believe I did that, or like something that we could have done better. Like even like we put out a very celebrative article about how great of a split this was, but in there, we snuck in like, and we want to do better, and I put it in the positive spin. We put it with a yeehaw partner kind of energy, but like my real energy is like, God damn it, I know we can get even more. Let's fucking go. Like that's just I think it's cool to see fans resonating and enjoying the changes, and it shows that we're on the right track. But we want to keep doing those sorts of things, and keep that energy going, so it doesn't just stall out or anything.
Yeah. All right. Very good. Well, hey, I think that's the show.
Yeah.
But I do really appreciate you coming on. I do want to congratulate you on a great split. I mean, I know that there's been a lot of times where this show has been frustrated with things like the roadshow, or a lot of things. As many of savvy folks on Reddit and my chat and other places, Discord has seen, I know that you are not an ultimate control of everything. I'm sure you would love to do a lot of the things that we are not, happy or are unable to happen. So I do really appreciate you and everything that you've done for the LCS the split, as many fans do as well. But yeah, I think with that, let's just get into shoutouts here at the end. Cubby, what do you want to plug? What do you want to shout out here?
Yeah. Shout out to the amateur combine that I was involved in for this past week, running the Rift. For folks that don't know, I'm currently consulting a team in my league, Supernova, until my broadcast split starts, but I'm able to do that in the off season. So I got to sit in and coach a lot of players, and just like there were some lobbies that were missing coaches, so I was coaching those, and then also some that like they had coaches, but I'm technically scouting. And it was a blast. Like there were over 200 players that were in there competing, and a lot of kids put their best foot forward. And I don't know, like I know like kind of what you were saying, Travis. Like sometimes fans are pessimistic, but man, like if I get in those scenarios and I see like players and people growing throughout a week competing in this game, like that's why I fell in love with this game in the first place. So, yeah, I think that it's something that like that was really cool. And so shout out to everyone in the amateur community for putting that on. Besides that, I'm excited. Happy Earth Day. That wasn't mentioned, but that's something that
is today Earth Day.
It is.
Oops.
Yeah, did you not know that? Gotta go touch grass, Travis. It's Earth Day.
It's too late. I've got a sponsorship after this.
Late.
So.
Oh, okay, it might be too late. And yeah, thanks, Mark. Thanks for joining us. And I'm happy for you guys. That sentiment is pretty positive. I know that you don't want to rest on laurels, but I know I know how hard you guys work on this. So it is nice to get some positive feedback here and there, and I hope that you guys are taking that the right way.
Mark, before I give you your shout out, 000S Kid in the chat says that's 2 hours of my life fucking wasted. The LCS commissioner's on the show and they won't talk about the only thing I'm interested in. Fuck. And the thing they were interested in was best of threes. So could you really quickly, because I know we just sort of skirt around it, but could you really quickly explain why it's difficult for you to like talk about unannounced things on a show like this?
Someone just leaves the sorry, Discord. Well, who knows if it's going to be announced or not, first off. That the first assumption might already be wrong there. How do you know there's something to announce? What if there was nothing to announce? Then
sure.
I would announce.
Okay, but setting aside that, let's say theoretically the LCS is moving to best of 10s, and that was a thing that was going to happen. Why can't you talk about it?
And any format change, or any changes to the LCS, I think we, generally speaking, want to discuss and highlight and share all the reasoning and like that sort of stuff going forward at the time where it will most helpfully help the products. So this is a period where spring is done. We do a retro in spring. We talk about this. There's MSI, and then there's going to be a period of time where summer's going to start. And whatever cool things we want to talk about with summer, we want to, hopefully put that out and drive attention, and people remember, oh, now LCS is on at this time and I want to watch it. So one, there's just like a desire from like a PR marketing thing to like save announcements for when you can make the most of them. There's also like giving teams and people, like when I say teams, I mean like internal teams, or like any changes you make, you want to make sure everything is 100% buttoned up before you say this is happening. Because like, for example, with live patch and reduced transitions, Travis knows this, I've been talking about wanting to do that for like a year at this point. And we had that in a decent spot after the break. When I say after the break, I mean like the Christmas break. So we went on a 2-week break. We basically got it soft approved, but we had like to do some tests and this and that. And we were really, really playing it to the line to get that across the spot. And at any point, technically, like if someone had reported live patch is coming to LCS, or it leaked because teams knew, or like because we were having conversations with people, like at any point it could have leaked, we still wouldn't comment on it because it's not the right time yet. There's still these like final things you want to button up, and whatever it is. So that's part of it. Anytime something changes, you need to make sure it's like 100%. In case like the 1 in 1,000 changes and something breaks, which has happened behind the scenes. I can say there's been times where I'm like, yep, we're locked on this, we're good to go, we're just gonna put it out in a week, and then like across that week someone catches one little new snag and you're like, okay, good thing we didn't rush it and put it out before it was ready or anything. So, and anything at all, like just you want to actually check all the boxes before you communicate it out.
Yeah, I can see the LPL changing their format as being a snag. No, I'm kidding. Anyway. Yeah.
Are they really going to do fearless draft? That's insane if they do. I just don't. I don't believe that's happening.
Insane if they do.
I don't believe that's happening. When I saw that news, I was like, okay, I don't. And I apologize if there's some journalist that has reported it, and I don't mean to. And I only saw the headline, and I just was like, I can't. I personally don't believe this is happening. So I'm not trying to like undermine anybody's reporting. I just like would be shocked if they do that.
I'd be shocked as well.
Yeah.
I don't think that like a pro league will change it until like it's changed for a whole year and like everyone commits to it. I can't see one league of that stature doing it.
Let's get Mark out of here because I appreciate it, and we're over time. Mark, I keep distracting. What are your shout-outs? What do you want to plug? What's going on?
Shout-outs to fans for watching. Shout-out LCS staff and teams and all the people for making it a great split. I shouted out the players in that video because I think they deserve it because, this was a bunch of crazy shit we threw at them, and they took it on the chin and played and, gave it their best effort. And, I think the changes were not as drastic as they might initially appear, but they were still different than any other league in the world. And they, met it with pretty positive attitude, I'd say, overall. And I was very, very thankful for that. So, yeah, I think shout out to everyone who participated in the LCS.
Yeah. I want to use my final shout out here just again to say thanks to Mark for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. I know you were in the office all day and then you have to keep working in the evening. So I appreciate that as well. Shout out Kobe, who is headed to MSI next month, and I will have this whole apartment to myself. And I don't know if he's still watching, but I just want to say I hope he has a good time over there at MSI. And thanks to everybody I met this past weekend up in Command Fest San Francisco. I met a whole lot of you. It was really fun, and I hope I get to see you all when I'm in Vancouver next month for Command Fest Vancouver. Thank you, everybody. What is chat really saying? Thank you for the leak. Oh yeah, we're all shocked that Kobe is casting fucking MSI. Kobe's spoilers, Mark, everybody. I fucking leaked that Kobe, who has done every single thing in the world, is going to be on the broadcast. Fuck you, Raz. I'm going to time you out again. Goodbye, everybody. We'll see you all next week for another episode of Hotline League.